Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Latika Bourke.
Hi. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Albright stage. It's lunchtime, so I'm not going to take this audience size personally, but we do have a fantastic cast of panellists to discuss today's topic, which is, can we decarbonise the world economy? I think I might add in that, do we even want to? Some different parts of the world are shaping their objectives and their goals on this topic a little differently to others these days. So joining me on stage, please welcome from Moldova, the Deputy Energy Minister, Karolina Novac. Thank you very much, Karolina. From the European Commission in the DG Climate, Jan Dusik. Thank you very much, Jan. And Gustavo Westmann, all the way from Brazil. He is Special Advisor to President Lula. So this will be a great discussion because we not only have such a geographic region, but so many different ways of looking at this issue. So Jan, I think I might begin with you, because obviously we're in Europe, in your beautiful home city of Prague, but we seem to be having a bit of a split personality about climate change across Europe at the moment. On one hand, you have these tremendous figures coming out just a few weeks ago showing you're on track to meet your 2030 targets, just 1% shy. It's a pretty great result. And yet, over the last few years, all we have seen the political debate do is take a course about how we can reduce our climate action, how this is affecting the everyday person, how it's eating into household budgets. How do you account for that split personality? And more importantly, how do you challenge and overcome it?
Yes, well, absolutely. We have an intense discussion in Europe, and not just in Europe, but it is natural, because if we are to stay within the objectives of the Paris Agreement, that means we need to completely change our way of living, not in terms of the quality of living, but in terms of where we take our energy from and how we contribute to climate change. And I think that what is important is to see two things. One is that climate risk is one of the number of risks that we have, and we are dealing with hard security, we are dealing with economic security. There is the climate security and climate risk, which is very important, which hasn't gone anywhere, because we have these newly emerged big risks. So this we need to remember, that this is a trigger which can make our other crises more significant. And looking at Karolina and the situation of Republic of Moldova is quite telling in that sense. But so this is part of the equation. And the other thing is that we have modified our narrative a little bit, in the sense that this is. Yes, this is a green agenda, but it's not primarily green because of the green.
Was it a mistake to call it green? Green
I wouldn't say so.
Seems to be a little bit of a dirty word in this conversation.
Well, it depends where you use the word. I agree that if you use it in the streets of Prague, you might get attacked by some people. But I would say that the point is that it's not a choice of green or not, and it's not a choice whether we are going to protect the polar bear on the ice sheet in the Arctic, or whether we are going to deal with a particular species in nature. The species that is in peril is the human, and the planet will survive the global warming as it has survived billions of years. But the humanity will suffer, and the economy will suffer a lot. And if we don't take that economic risk seriously, we will have big economic losses. And basically, the cost of climate change is about 6-7 times higher than the cost of mitigating climate change. So this is a conscious choice to deal with climate change because of the economic and security implications, as much as taking care of the environment and the planet.
We'll come back to the mitigation and adaptation piece, because I think that's the other side of this coin. But for you in the room, if you do want to put some questions to the panelists, please feel free to join us on Slido. You'll see the QR codes. And we have some polling questions as well, which I would like you to consider over the course of this discussion, and by the end, let's take a look. So I think we have our polling questions ready, who will ask you on Slido if you actually do agree that we are on track to decarbonise the world economy or not, or if you think that that's no longer a realistic goal with some of the changes we've seen in the global situation. We'll discuss this. And another polling question we have, oh, okay, first answer is quite emphatic. Now we're down to 50-50. Great, thank you. Please do keep your polling questions coming in. And the second question we want to ask you is about what the Trump administration has done on climate and whether that has set back global climate goals. So if you want to have a think about that, and also consider any questions, you do have an opportunity to raise your hand at the end of this discussion and ask them in person. But if you would prefer to do it on Slido, go ahead. We'll keep an eye out. Okay, Carolina, let's go to Moldova. You have such an interesting situation when it comes, obviously, to your geopolitics. How has that transformed Moldovans' thinking on how it approaches climate change and how it sits inside your resilience and security piece?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Indeed, Moldova used to, till 2021, to be dependent by one source of gas, one route as well, and the same gas was used to produce most of our electricity. So almost a complete locked-in approach. You know, it's a perfect storm for when a crisis can hit and you are literally in trouble. And we've seen the worst of it. When you don't actually have an alternative, you then realize that diversification in terms of technologies, in terms of sources, of routes, it's of utmost importance. I've been recently in Baku, and actually I would emphasize diversification should be the sort of leitmotif in general when we think about the energy sector, because it's important that you have a choice. And that's what happened in 2021 when we first, before actually Europe was hit with Nord Stream 2, and not only when Gazprom cut its supplies. We've seen this. 35% of the gas supplies were reduced. The same then followed next year when the war has also started in Ukraine. And in a previous panel, I've heard, not going to say who, but someone said, well, it's very difficult to divert from the Russian gas imports. Yes, you can, and you should. You shouldn't fuel then further on all the profits of Gazprom, which then can be utilized for the war in Ukraine. This should be very clearly stated and pursued against these imports. And yes, there is plenty of other alternatives in that sense. So what did we do? Indeed, after, I think, 4 energy crises, we've learned our lessons, and since then, we've, on one hand, pushed this huge agenda on renewables, because we do not have any fossil fuels. We have no gas, no oil, no coal. And then guess what? You embrace decarbonization wholeheartedly. Because that's the only viable option that you have in the country. And it's for that reason we have, for the first time, actually organized this renewables auction, which is contracts for difference. We just finalized yesterday, so I can already mention, I mean, renewables, it's such a fantastic story for us, because above all, it's not just about green energy or clean energy, but it's first and foremost about energy security. It's the energy that we produce in our country, and it's not dictated somewhere in Kremlin of, or should we reduce the supplies or not. So we have, in a way, a control over this resource. Second, surprisingly enough, now we have a situation where renewables is the cheapest source in Moldova among all of the, let's say, the full share of electricity sources in the country. And also is getting the biggest share. Only in 4 years back, we had 3% of renewables consumption, the whole electricity mix. Now we have reached 35% in April. I mean,
this is a stunning result.
So yes, we can.
And it tells the story itself, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Cheaper and
more than that, I generally believe in the fact that we can also steer an economic development through this whole energy transition. That's what we're doing, by the way, in the energy efficiency sector, where we have launched for the first time the Residential Energy Efficiency Fund. So where a block of flats, but also individual houses, they will be renovated. And we do have a few good companies which are excelling in terms of construction work. So when it comes to the energy auditing, technical designs of the projects. And now the next level, after we trigger this, this fund, also, by the way, 3 other projects only for public institutions developed with IFIs. The next phase for us, it should be sort of identifying a mechanism to trigger all these investments from the local companies, right? So glass produced in Moldova or cement to be used also for these renovations. So to turn this into a full cycle, development cycle, which can also come in benefit for our companies. So this is where we stand now. We are also planning the second auction, renewables auction. What we have already realized is that first, PVs, they don't need any support mechanism. PVs, so solar energy, it's a significantly mature technology. It can run by itself. We've seen. And
is solar your dominant renewable source in Moldova? It's
indeed,
solar.
Indeed. And by the way, also in the past 4 years, so that you have a better understanding, our installed capacities have increased by 8 times. So now we are also exporting to Ukraine. We're also exporting to Romania. We want more exports to Romania. And I believe that by 2030, we can be a net exporter of renewables. It's feasible, but that has to come in conjunction with investments into the grids. And when I say grids, it's both transportation, distribution grids, but also storage. Storage is the next biggest investment that we will see, because by no means with all of these renewables access, we've seen what happened in Spain, by the way.
Yes.
And we don't want to repeat that as well. We should be very careful. Still, the investigation is ongoing, but we should also have in mind the importance of the security of the energy sector. So reliability, resilient grids as well. For that, you need storage. And when I say storage, it's not just battery energy system storage, which is still a dropping cost, and there's still issues with the recycling of it. But also, the truth is that you will also have to reach out to ICE, so internal combustion engine, and also gas turbines. That is still, technologically speaking, the solution. But we have to think also system-wise. And when I say system-wise, of course, bearing in mind the importance of transition, of decarbonization, but we have to keep that stability into the grids as well, and have the people on board with us.
Okay, Gustavo, this is the sort of story I think you want to propel when you host COP later this year. How much of a setback has what Donald Trump done since he's been re-elected posed to COP and the future of climate agreements globally?
Well, good afternoon,
Just an easy question to begin
Yeah,
with.
well, that's a good one. Jan, Caroline, it's a really great pleasure to be here. Well, we are working hard to restore multilateral systems, and of course, has somehow impose some setbacks on this agenda. That's undeniable, but we're still very optimistic. I was trying to dialogue with these 20% here that said that decarbonization is not a. Come on, guys, we have to believe that. If we don't believe it, how can we deal with the challenges ahead? I think
But I think that is an important distinction, because we're talking here about realistic and belief being one of the problems that the Green Movement has had this whole process, right? We have to talk in hard practicalities, which maybe is where this 20% is coming from. I don't know if whoever is in the room wants to address why they felt that way. So what is your role as the president of COP this year to actually drive these hard practicalities in a climate where you have big powers retreating from targets being set on a globally recognised platform?
Yeah, that's something we've been working on a lot. So what does Brazil expect from this COP? And I believe this is should I use both? This fancy one and another one. I think what do we expect from this conference on climate change? We expect it to be the COP of the implementation, the COP of the inflection, the COP of the transition, a just transition, a transition that is just, the COP of participation. We need everybody to join, to be part, to embrace this agenda, to bring everybody on board. But above all, the COP that will restore faith in the multilateral system. If we don't work together, we won't reach the goals or the ambition we need in order to stop climate change.
So do you believe the COP mechanism is still valid?
Oh yes, definitely. I think it has made very important progress throughout the year. I think the Paris Agreement is a beautiful example of how can we work together. And I don't believe the current setbacks will be enough to contain this movement towards a greener, a just transition. But we need to work, and we are facing COP, we're seeing it in different ways, in different aspects. So I believe some important things to share with you. And actually, one of the main reasons I wanted and insisted on being here today was exactly to bring this voice from Brazil, from South America, to kind of bring these new perspectives on the debate. So we are seeing COP, and I'll try to be very brief, but it's worth sharing with you, on the side of the Leader Summit, negotiation, action agenda, and mobilization. They are all super important. On the side of the Leader Summit, I'll let it, I was just talking to Jan here, it's going to be super, we expect it to be ambitious, but I'll leave it aside for now. On the side of negotiations, and that goes in the direction of that we believe COPs still have an important role to play, we have to understand that COP is a process, not an event. So we see lots of expectations towards Brazil, like Brazil. And of course, Brazil is definitely one of the few countries in the world that has conditions to bring hearts and minds together in such a complex and polarized global order. But we have to be pragmatic. And I think we'll deliver some important things on just transition. Adaptation, we're trying to bring more attention to adaptation. That's the biggest demand of developing nations. So we have to face how to deal with the floods and the rough situations that developing countries are facing, but all the entire world. On the mitigation side, and then we have to address the white elephant and take it out of the room. So how can you address the transition from fossil fuels, the phase out of fossil fuels? We are committed to deliver something concrete. But then comes your question, what and how in this such a complex and polarized global order? So we have Trump, we have the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis affecting Europe. We have kind of Venezuela kind of going rogue. The oil producers countries, even though they have like those sovereign funds that reach to an amount of like 13, 15 trillion. It's interesting that today, last year, we agreed in Baku on $3 billion, but we all know that we need 1.3 trillion. And just last year, we spent 2.7 trillion in defense, war. So just half of that would be able to help us save the planet in a kind of. So I think, and I'm concluding these initial remarks, I think we have to face COP as a time pacer, and the time has arrived for us to make a shift, to change our minds. We need to connect the climate agenda to real life people, like to not only to governments, but like to local level, civil society, to agro, to the industry, to small and medium enterprise, but also like to Uncle John, Aunt Mary, like real people. We need to reach these people and make them understand that we are all part of the solution. I wouldn't say part of the problem, but we are all part of the solution. And that's what Brazil is trying to bring to the fore. We created a concept of mutirão. I don't know if you heard about it. Have you heard about this mutirão thing? That's one of the greatest, you probably heard, right? And I don't know if you heard, Caroline.
You're gonna have to explain us.
So briefly, the idea of mutirão is local collective action. So we've been doing that forever. So it's like when people get together to help someone and put a brick to help someone build something, or to, to go all together and plant trees all together. So that's mutirão. What we're trying to do is to put that on scale and with resources. So we're trying to reach everyone by telling them you're part of the solution and giving conditions for them to make a difference. It may sound a bit idealistic, but I believe by introducing this concept, we're already making something very important in the mindset that involves these conferences on climate change.
So Brazil is obviously part of the, for want of a better term, the crude term Global South. You hold BRICS later this year as well. Do you think that this gives Brazil any particular advantage over, say, a Western country hosting COP in being able to talk to the Chinese about their own carbon targets and the pace of accelerating?
Well, lots of points in your question. We are dialoguing a lot with China in the context of BRICS now, and we were trying to release a declaration of the leaders on climate change agenda, so it's already a super advance that has never happened before in BRICS history. I think the Chinese...
And is this Brazil's idea?
That was Brazil's idea. Okay. Yeah, we innovate quite a lot. I think we're dialoguing a lot. I think China is quite open to speeding up the transition and to present more ambitious commitments towards the climate agenda. The only thing in your sentence that I would say, when you say like the West, China, I'm trying to relativize this sort of divisions in the current days. Brazil has definitely leading or trying to lead or contributing to leading the voice of the Global South, more than West or East. I think this is, and it doesn't mean that Global South is in opposition to the Global North, definitely not, that we have to work together, but that we have to have a more present voice and a more concrete voice of the Global South in the negotiations, in the table where decisions are taken. So that's kind of...
I'm very glad I asked that question. Jan, I want to pick you up on the China piece, because in Europe we have, again, another split personality issue when it comes to climate change. On one hand, China has all but taken industries you were developing in Europe on solar and things like this. And now one of the arguments put forward against accelerating renewables is that China owns these industries and we've got to slow it down until we can create our own homegrown industries. How is this debate playing out in Europe, and do you think it affects your climate targets at all?
Well, by the way, we are also talking to China a lot. Today, the environment minister of China is in Brussels having meetings with the EU leadership, and we will have a summit of the presidents in Beijing next month, which will talk a lot also about what we can do together for Brazil, so for the COP. But we are we see that race of decarbonization as a joint race, and that's why I was not happy with juxtaposing whether this is a belief, it's a religion. It's not a religion, it's a choice that we need for our way of living. It's an economic choice, and it is something that that is working, and I think that we in the EU have a proof of this being working, having reduced the emissions while growing continuing with the economic growth. So this is the avenue. This is what I call the one-way street through which we are all going, and then everyone has a choice of the speed on that street. And coming back to your question, this is exactly where we need to see Europe in the future, and that's where we brought together something which is in this strategy of the Clean Industrial Deal, where we are basically combining competitiveness of Europe with decarbonization.
Yeah.
It's not either or. It's
Yes.
not choices. It is we can be competitive in our decarbonization movement. Of course, we need to see what are the strongholds of European businesses, European production, where we can thrive domestically, but also globally, where we can work with partners around the world, how we can also stimulate their own decarbonization through business partnerships that we have.
But what is the tension in that race? Is Europe in a position now where it can lead on innovation and developing these technologies itself, or are you a taker still from China for the foreseeable future?
It very much depends in which technologies. There are certainly technologies where Europe can lead. I would use the example of heat pumps, which are very important also for the heating systems, or the decarbonization of heavy industry, which originate in Europe. And this is one of the business cases. When we look at the big debate about the automotive industry, we can see that there is significant imports of clean vehicles from China. This will continue, but still there is an important niche that the European car industry can have. But that niche will disappear if we hide our head in the sand and say, well, leave us alone. We want to have our comfort, and hopefully this will go away, and we will again be where we were before. So this is not just decarbonization; it's overall relations in trade around the world, which are uprooted also thanks to what the Donald Trump administration is doing. So we need to navigate through more complex waters globally, but there is definitely a big body of European businesses, innovation, experience that can be the winners of the decarbonization in the global sense.
So our polling is moving around a little. It was going up to 25% who think no. No, this is our different poll. Do you think Trump will set back the rest of the world on climate goals? 77% say yes. Oh. That is quite emphatic. Does the panel agree with that?
I think, the question is a little twisted. I think that, yes...
yeah, and you don't like my questions.
Yes, the fact that Donald Trump has on his first day said that the US will leave the Paris Agreement is not good news. It's a bad signal globally, because the US is the number 2 emitter. But it is what is important is what will happen on the ground in the US, and we can witness that there's much more granularity in what's happening in the US. We can see that a big part of the US states are continuing. We can see that this is a business case that will prevail, irrespective whether Donald Trump will use the word of climate change or not. There is much more than that. There is the whole finance sector that is looking at the sustainability of businesses, and there is the whole question about how climate change is impacting already countries like the United States, be it wildfires or floods, extreme events, impacts on agriculture, etc. So again, you may choose to put your head in the sand and say, I don't want to hear about it, but it is there and you need to deal with it.
What overtures is Brazil making to the White House ahead of COP30, Gustavo?
We have to dialogue. And that's been tough. I think one of the things we learn when we are hosting such an event is that we need to find consensus. Brazil has always been a very vocal voice in the climate change agenda, but hosting a COP is a kind of different things, because you have to bring different stakeholders together. Decisions are actually taken by unanimous decision. So that's how the system somehow works. We are worried, but I believe we are trying to, of course, we're negotiating, trying to figured out that yet, as Ian said, the United States, not only Trump, right? There is a private sector, there's a civil society.
Yes.
There are a lot of people in the US that are still very committed to the climate change agenda. Just to give you an example, UNFCCC in great part is financed, or used to be financed by the US. They withdrew the resource. And if not mistaken, it's Bloomberg, right?
Bloomberg,
And
yep.
they said, no, I will keep, supporting them. So that's a kind of message that we need.
Maybe
to
you could
focus
encourage
on.
Elon Musk to
Well,
divert his funds to a better cause this time.
That would
around.
be a tough one, but yeah, definitely. By the way, I talked very recently, that was fantastic. I had with the vice presidents of Microsoft, MasterCard, Amazon, and we had a very good discussion. They were really focused on being in Belém and being part of COP instead of course, they were thinking, but like I was, guys, develop a strategy. If each and every one of you announce something powerful, like they have a commitment to net zero by 2040, but also like the amount of people they can reach and in terms of mass mobilization, campaigning. So use those tools. So that's kind of a way we're using to not overcome or to go through but to engage the US in the climate agenda and in COP30.
And who's proved easier so far, China or the United States?
I think in the current days, China has been very supportive, at least in the narrative. And we're just discussing, China has already reached its peak of emissions. So we believe from now on, they'll only go down. And one thing that China has understood, the US also, but we have Trump there that has been creating problems, is that they can profit a lot from the transition. And China is really leading this process by, I don't know if the figures are right, but China produces around 80% of the solar panels in the world.
Yes.
That's like really a lot, considering that we're increasing that exponentially. So they understood that BYD, they are making these cars, so they are understanding that. And it's not
But this invites a lot of geopolitics these days. Carolina, what would Moldova want from COP30? And back to Moldova's experience, where does your financing come from? Is your geopolitical situation making it harder or easier to obtain finance and investment in Moldova? Does it come mostly from the European Commission? Where is your big support for these projects?
Well, depends. So on renewables, we will manage now to get the biggest FDI, which is foreign direct investment, which in fact is not even that much foreign, since primarily these are local companies, but who knows, maybe their finance will be from abroad, which is very good. So we are not getting a sovereign loan, but this is direct foreign investments. That's one. Second, on energy efficiency, as I've mentioned earlier, for public institutions, we have really quite a collaborative framework there. It's getting quite crowded, and there are many countries who want to chip in and support. The Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries. Of course, the EU is our number one partner and great friend, and we really look forward to become the next EU member state in that sense. And we have received grants, but also with IFIs on energy efficiency, because actually, on energy efficiency, this is the best loan you can get, since it's easily recoverable. It's very, how should I call it, fungible in that sense. And we are planning now with the World Bank to even elaborate this concept of super ESCO. Super ESCO is when you renovate one building with the savings, energy savings that you generate, therefore also money savings, you replicate it upon other buildings. But if I can come to the earlier point of Gustavo, because we can talk here full day long about targets, implementation, and so on. My experience so far being in the government is that if you do not manage to convince people to get them along your targets, your plans, then you'll basically, you can set new targets, and then those targets, put them in the desk, and the dust will settle. So we have to communicate with people. We have to raise this awareness, the consciousness. In Moldova,
is this a challenge in Moldova? Where is the public at on a climate change understanding and support mechanism?
I would say it's two challenges. So one, we have full disinformation from we know who. And that's literally on a daily basis. On renewables, I see this fake news that it's expensive, it will bring blackouts, and we have to face it. We have to fight it, actually.
Have you had any blackouts? Your renewables, as you stated, is going up.
We had blackouts when the Russians have attacked the Ukrainian infrastructure. That's when we had it, but not because of surplus of renewables. So this fight of disinformation, you have to face it. You have to literally, it's a hybrid war.
Yeah.
You have to, on a daily basis, to fight it back, get the arguments on board, and you have to communicate with people straightforwardly, and where you see hesitation, to convince them, actually. That's on one hand. Secondly, I think, yes, we need to, build this bridge in terms of awareness. So when we speak about CO2 or in general emission reduction, we have to replicate it into very layman's terms and say to people, look, these emissions, that's how the natural disasters they come, that's why we have droughts, that's how your production agriculture is getting affected. And actually the World Bank has done for us a fantastic, great work on this country climate development report. Very good one, which emphasizes the nexus between emissions and our development of the country, how it will get affected if we do nothing by 2040. How the output of corn and other products, agricultural cultures, they will get reduced. So it's very important without creating any panic, but we translate it into concrete impact, but also what is the solution? Where should our eggs should go, in which basket, and this should be put forward towards people in terms of the benefits they will get. What's in it for them as well? So not just panic, but also to talk about opportunities, about jobs, about economic development, which is actually, you can drive it with the energy transition, but you have to get them on board as well.
Yeah, and what strikes me about what all of you have been saying is just how obviously integrated all these conversations now are. I think we knew they were always integrated, but the events of the last 3 or 4 years have made it so clear. It's energy security, national security, it's disaster resilience, it's adaptation, it's all together. We have 10 minutes left, so if there are questions in the room, please do make yourself known. We have such a great panel. It would be great for you to shoot some questions if you have them, and don't forget you can also use Slido if you would prefer not to have a microphone brought to you, but of course you're welcome to use either method. What technologies do we see as the big drivers looking ahead? Is it nuclear? Jan, the European Commission just put out some staggering figures today of how many hundreds of billions would be required to get nuclear off. We still don't see SMRs really in reality, but we all hope that's going to be a breakthrough we have. Is it nuclear? Is it solar? Thereby bringing, again, that dependency on Chinese supply lines into question. Where in your experience are we seeing the real drivers in technology?
I can maybe start. Obviously, we are trying to catch the train of the 1.5 degree Paris target, and we know that already last year we have reached that 1.5 degree milestone. It is not. It does not say that we have exceeded, but it is a very big warning sign. So that means that we have to speed up, and we have to turn every stone in order to stop our emissions. And in order to do that, we have to look at the technologies that we have now, the technologies which are already on the horizon, but also technologies that will come in the future. So we need to invest very much in things like carbon capture and storage and carbon.
We have been saying that for many decades, however.
It is happening. It takes years, right? These are not technically simple solutions, but we are investing. We are pushing, for instance, oil and gas companies to put money into the development of these technologies, because that's the disadvantage of the global climate architecture is that if you are a producer of oil and gas, you ship it around the world and you don't care about what happens at the time when it is burned. So that shared responsibility, I think, needs to be reinforced. In principle, electrify whatever can be electrified.
Yeah.
Use, in principle, wherever local production of renewables. And I think that the case of Moldova turning the crisis into an opportunity of becoming one of the leaders in renewable energy is a case in point, and that helps engaging the citizens as being part of the solution, being the producer of renewable energy from by roof. This is a powerful signal. But yes, we have to do other innovations. Nuclear, from the European Commission perspective, is part of the mix. You don't build a nuclear power plant overnight. It has a huge cost. It has also the questions.
I live in London.
Fuel.
You don't build a nuclear power plant in 2 decades, it would seem.
It's from the climate perspective, this is something that is part of the solution, at least at this moment. But really, we have to find ways how to decarbonize as quickly as possible, and being mindful of what we are emitting today will have an impact in 20 years from now.
Carolina, I think this question is actually very good for you. I'm going to put 2 together that we've had come in from Slido, because it relates to what you're talking about with the Russian disinformation. Looking beyond 2030, do we see the EU as more integrated and strong, or with more populist anti-EU? I think this is a very good question, because this clearly affects climate policy, and Moldova is on the front line of this. And then how do you actually push back? What are the tools you're using to combat this disinformation?
So we even have a state-run website which analyzes all this fake news, which they get reported, and then automatically it's being put forward as a stop false news.
Is this coming through on Facebook? What channels is it disseminated on primarily in Moldova?
Yeah, so it's not just Facebook, but I would say Telegram, all social media platforms. You have to be hands-on approach, but then again, even the comms specialists, they will tell you, because if you start playing their game, then you're on a defensive line.
Yes.
So I think also what narrative you choose to fight back. It's important also, I think, sometimes actually your best argument is the action in itself, which speaks for the people. So for instance, even on renewables, the fact that it's the cheapest, and you keep saying that over and over, you repeat it, currently the cheapest source. Second, yes, it's variable, it's intermittent, but it's produced in Moldova. You can also install these PVs. Now we are creating some benefits. As I mentioned, we are launching this program with the support of the EU as well. It's called Sustainable House Program, which will provide heat pumps, PVs plus batteries in conjunction, also renovate their houses. This is the best example.
So a lower electricity bill is a pretty powerful weapon against Russian disinformation.
Absolutely, yeah. Tariffs in general, energy tariffs, they play a huge role in our narrative and in our discussion, but also the consumers' purchasing power, I would say. And the truth is that as long as you, I think, enforce them, right? Because energy, you can also think it about the three Ds, right? Digitalization, decentralization, but also I call it democratization. Because when you have prosumers, these are not passive consumers who just come home and then they turn on their lights on and off. These are active consumers who check their phones, how much consumption, when should I put my washing machine. You know, they're conscious about the environment, about the bill that they will get, and they will monitor as well. They will be fully aware about each appliances in their houses. It's a different behavior. And I think we should also engage differently with people, communicating better to them what is the consumption per each household appliance as well. Or in Ukraine, look, another fantastic example. When the attack started on the different power generation units, guess which was the technology which was more difficult to, destroy? This was PV parks, but also wind parks, because it's not enough to shut down a whole solar park by, I don't know, attacking some modular panels. You have to attack either the inverter, whereas what happened with the nuclear power plant, sorry, not the nuclear, the CHP, combined heat and power. That was an easier target in that sense. So That is to say that decentralized supplies and installed capacities, they also serve stronger for the national security of a country. And also from a system-wise perspective, it's less congesting the power grids, and you distribute it more evenly across the country. So this has to be thought through, as I said, in a system-wise, and more horizontally rather than vertically.
The more you talk, the more I want to hear about Moldova's experience. I'm going to end on this very cheery question we've had come in on Slido. Is it realistic to argue that global climate policy can be successful if the two most consequential players, the US and China, may be heading towards war? What a final thought. Gustavo? This one has COP30 written all over it.
Yes, of course it is. I mean, yes, I think we have to be, we are at an inflection point, guys. We are really at a turning point. And I think we must be optimistic towards what to expect from this new era that is starting right now. We're finally shifting from a period of negotiation to a period of implementation. If we don't believe that the two main polluters in the world will not commit, we already lost the battle. So I think we have to believe, but not only believe, as Latika provoked us several times. We've been promising things for like decades. What are the results? Some results you can see, but they are far from being enough. I think, as I told you, China has understood that we have a new economy, and you can profit from this new economy. The US also. If Trump didn't get it, the American society is getting it. I think one of the key points, and I conclude my remarks, we have to stop being naive and believing that, oh, we have to do good to the climate because I'm good and I care about the other, and thinking it as an economic alternative.
Show me the money.
We can profit from that. Show me the money, and you will get your money.
Yeah.
Okay? That's how human beings are. Hopefully we will evolve, and one day it will be so altruistic as it should be. But I think we're getting, at least the narrative is there. People are finally understanding that. So yes, it is realistic.
Well, thank you very much to these three wonderful panelists. I hope you enjoyed that discussion as much as I did. It was a brilliant conversation. Thank you so much, all three of you. And now we're heading off for lunch, and that's in the Atrium Restaurant and the Seasons Restaurant in the lobby. And then come back to the Albright stage for a session on the topic of military mobility. Thank you very much for coming to the panel.